Everyone say, Amen.
Thank you, Reverend. Thank you, Shirley. Have your seats, please. Member of Parliament for Couva South, Minister of Public Utilities, Minister in the Office of the Prime Minister, Leader of Government Business, the Honorable Barry Padarath, Member of Parliament for Sawa Barataria, Minister of Legal Affairs and Minister in the Ministry of Agriculture, Mr. Saddam Hussein, Honorable Saddam Hussein, my good friend Roshan Baba, lawyer in Couva South, representing us here today, councillors present, aldermen present, members of the Couva South Executive, members of staff of Couva South, brothers and sisters. Good evening, everyone. I said good evening, everyone. Good evening. And thank you for being here today. As chair of this session, I'd like to welcome each and every one of you, residents, stakeholders, law enforcement representatives, and community leaders, to this important community discussion on the proposed Stand Your Ground legislation here in Trinidad and Tobago. This topic affects every one of us, our safety, our rights, and the way justice is applied in our homes, in our communities, and even on our streets. Tonight, our goal is not to debate along political lines, but to understand the facts, weigh the risk, and discuss what is best for Couva South and Trinidad at large. This session is about building awareness and encouraging public dialogue. We'll explore what Stand Your Ground law means, the data from other countries that have enacted similar legislation, and what this could mean for our local context here in Couva South. Currently, under Trinidad and Tobago law, self-defense is allowed, but you must prove you face an imminent threat and could not safely retreat. The proposed Stand Your Ground legislation removed the duty to retreat, allowing individuals to use deadly force if they believe they are under threat, even if escape is possible. This applies in situations like home invasion or business break-in. And the new bill seeks to grant immunity from prosecution if the use of force is deemed justified. But with this comes responsibility and risk. To understand why this law is being considered, let us look at some of the numbers. Trinidad and Tobago has seen over 500 murders annually, with 75% involving firearms. In Couva South, while we don't have the official district numbers here tonight, we know residents are increasingly concerned about break-ins, armed robberies, and delayed police response time. We know in Calcutta and Bokaro we had several break-ins, and we were very worried about it in the past. Also in Balmain and other parts of Couva South. And burglaries, right, okay. So this fear is real, and protection of life and property is at the forefront of everyone's mind. We need to reflect as a community. One, will this law truly make us safer, or just increase chances of violence? Two, are residents trained and psychologically prepared to make life and death decisions? Three, how are this to affect domestic disputes, neighborhood conflicts, or mistaken identity situations? These are some of my remarks on this consultation here this afternoon. My duty is to be your chairperson for this afternoon, so I would want to introduce the first speaker, our Member of Parliament for Couva South. He is the Minister of Public Utilities, Minister in the Ministry, in the Office of the Prime Minister. He is the Leader of Government Business. I think with all those responsibilities, we have to call him Superman. And if you have noticed in the past, he is standing his ground. He is standing his ground. If they push him, he push back harder. And that is why we love him. And when he push harder, he have them rolling on the ground. And that is our good friend and member of parliament, Honorable Mr. Put your hands together to welcome Mr. Barry Padarath.
Good evening, everyone. Allow me to recognize my colleague in the cabinet and in the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago, a very young, industrious, I think he is the youngest member of Parliament right now, and that is none other than the brilliant, hardworking Minister of Legal Affairs, Member of Parliament for Barataria San Juan. Give him a Couva South welcome. That is Mr. Saddam Hussein. You just heard from Mr. Sharma Suknanan, who has been leading the charge here in Couva South. I want to thank Sharma, members of the constituency executive. I see so many of them here with us this afternoon. So thank you for your efforts as you continue to hold the flagship constituency of Couva South solidly in the column of the United National Congress. This evening, we have with us several of our local government representatives. I want to take the time to recognize them because often they get a lot of blame of what is not happening. But I have very hardworking councillors in the Couva Tabiki Talpara Regional Corporation who try their very best. I want to recognize none other than a household name in central Trinidad, if not all of Trinidad and Tobago, Councillor Alan Taxi Sipasad. Our dear sister, Arlene Solomon Ramesa. Neighboring right here in the constituency of Claxton Bay, Pointe-a-Pierre, none other than Nadia Khan. Joining us, I saw Councillor Rajbal with us this evening as well. Thank you, Rajbal. You had the cataract surgery, who has seen by had the problem. This evening, we also have Councillor Gangaram Gopal. We also have former alderman with us, Angie Benjamin. Thank you, Angie. I see a mix of both residential, commercial, and special interest groups being represented, separate and apart from constituents who are generally concerned about their safety and security. And before I go into that, I want to also recognize a stalwart in the constituency of Couva South, who you can attribute to getting a better water supply, none other than the chairman of WASA, our dear brother, attorney at law, Roshan Babwa. I see the president of the Couva Point Lisa's Chamber of Commerce with us, Mr. Devraj Mahes. That was quite a mouthful. Except to say I'm so very happy to see so many of you turning out at this most important, affectionately known as Stand Your Ground consultation. The bill's name is not Stand Your Ground, and I would allow Saddam to go into the technical parts of the bill. But I want to put context into why we find ourselves here this evening. For almost 10 years, crime was allowed to run away in our country, where we moved from high spikes in murders periodically, progressing into the area of kidnapping for ransom, then going into the area of extortion of business and non-business people alike, to today where we have home invasions and a consortium of all. That has created a tremendous amount of fear among our population. But it was the vision and brainchild of the Honorable Kamla Prasad Bisesa, Prime Minister, then in opposition, to look for ways in which we can empower our population. One, look at measures outside of the box in terms of the current national security arrangements that exist, whether it's on the statute books or whether it's in terms of an operational standpoint. For far too long, we have complained in this country for basic things. Not being able to have sufficient and adequate resources available to the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. So I've contextualized for you the natural progression of serious crime, very serious crime, and how it has gotten progressively worse instead of progressively better. And in local parlance, we say drastic times call for drastic action. Drastic time calls for drastic action. And moving from opposition, we came into government on April 28, knowing exactly where we wanted to go in terms of establishing short-term measures, medium-term measures, and long-term measures in terms of dealing with crime. But let us not forget, it's often said, when you forget from where you have come, you are doomed to repeat the mistakes of the past. And therefore, the opposition is a little agitated every time Saddam and I speak in particular, because we remind them of what we inherited and why sometimes there's a challenge to get things up and running as quickly as you may want it to happen. I have a mantra, and that mantra is process must always be followed. You want to get from point A to Z, there's a process in law to get you from A to Z. But where you have ideas, solutions, and recommendations that have no basis in law, you now have to create the law. So one of the arguments that was being put forward with respect to stand your ground legislation prior to us coming into government was the issue of others within the industry, stakeholders, whether they were law enforcement, whether they were lawyers, was that there were already laws on the books that would allow you to have some degree of protection if someone were to invade your home and you were to defend yourself with some measure of force. That's the first limb. The second limb is the compatible legislation. And the compatible legislation that we must now look at are things that already exist on the statute book, yes, but things within the law where there are loopholes that may not give you that rigid protection that we would want to give you in the context of the society in which we find ourselves in today. We have seen within the recent times where persons have invaded homes, where citizens have used force in which to protect themselves. And then it has to go to the DPP office for the DPP then to interpret based on the current legislation to determine whether or not you are to be charged for using excessive force or whether or not you will not be charged. What the Honorable Prime Minister said when we're in opposition, and I know some of you all like it when she said, load up the matic and knock it on them. But it came from a position of understanding. Someone comes into your home in the dead of night. They attack your family, your loved ones in the most heinous way. Whether it's sexual assault, it is robbery, it is murder. What do you do? And we have sort of couched this stand your ground legislation, understanding as well there must be the operational element to it. And therefore, when the opportunity arose, within a short space of time, we were called upon to appoint a commissioner of police. Your government did not choose to play politics by pulling somebody who was 4th and 5th down the merit list or going to president's house to say, I don't want this one because I don't like them. The Prime Minister said, we will do the right thing because it is the right thing to do. First recommendation, the person who scored the highest on the merit list, the person who had the confidence reposed in them by the Police Service Commission was the recommendation that came before the Parliament. And all 26 members of the UNC, aided and abetted and supported by our colleagues from Tobago, voted unanimously for Officer Guevara to become your Commissioner of Police. And today, when I decided who we would have come and speak to you about the proposed legislation, I could have brought anyone. But purpose is something I'm always guided by. And to me, with all due respect to all the attorneys inside and outside of the Parliament, when you have persons holding portfolio, understanding the challenge because they represent people at a parliamentary level, fighting in the opposition as a senator, then becoming a member of Parliament in the last Parliament, then coming into this Parliament, there's no better person or persons than people who you elect as your members, who stand up and advocate for the law. And you can see it. Whether it's inside or outside of the Parliament, I'm always happy to promote Saddam because he's bright. He's smart. He understands the context in which he speaks, but also he understands the context in which he lives. And that to me is important. That to me is important. And therefore he speaks a language that telegraphs for every man, woman, and child to understand the basics of what the framework of the law is proposing to do, but also to give you the operational element to tell you when we put more boots on the ground, when we put policy into effect, because many of you have been asking. Police stations didn't have water. They didn't have paper. They didn't have vehicles. And in the short space of time, it may not be where we want it to be just as yet, but there are incremental changes that are happening. Today, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service put out their statistics doing a comparison of the rate of murders where we were at on August 4th last year. And I want to share some of those statistics with you. Because Prime Minister always tells us, one murder is one murder too many. One rape, one home invasion is one too many. But we must start from somewhere to bring it down. And we use the data to inform our decisions as to what is working. So we came in at a time where the national budget was far advanced in terms of the expenditure of the country. We came in on April 28th. The national budget will be read sometime, whether it's the end of September, October. Traditionally, those are the times the national budget is read. But the expenditure for the TTPS and other associated organizations that deal with law enforcement, they were far advanced in their expenditure. And therefore, we then had to look within the remit of the media review to see where our priority areas were in terms of aligning the expenditure of the police station and the TTPS to better resource boots on the ground, vehicles in stations, and a better responsiveness from law enforcement. So you are coming into a new budget cycle in October. When we come to the Parliament in October, we will speak to you more about the operational element. What we are asking you today to do is to lend your voice to how do you see or what do you propose in terms of the Stand Your Ground legislation. We have started some of this. There are areas where people are concerned that if the bandit approaches you at your gate, are you then protected from your gate? And we may not have all the answers available to us here today, but that is why we want to hear from you. So therefore, when the law goes to, whether it goes to the Law Review Commission, a Joint Select Committee, wherever the government sees the law going, then we can say we have consulted with you and these were the concerns that you have expressed. Now that's one element. The other element has to do with the firearms user's license. And I see, without calling names, I see so many business groups represented here this evening. And I know that that is a concern you've had for quite a while. I think in the last few years we have not had a commissioner of police that has worked assiduously, particularly with the business community, to ensure that there is this level of protection. Just a few days ago, I think we were all gripped by an invasion at an establishment in La Cruz Road, Pinal. That video went viral when gunshots just rained out. Had those persons there been able to possibly, I'm not saying that it would have mitigated that scenario, but there's a greater degree of confidence as business operators, understanding that you have the resources available to you to protect yourself, to protect your establishment, and protect your family. And therefore, having read recently and listened to this commissioner of police, I want to congratulate the commissioner for aligning the policy of the administration with the operations of the TTPS. And we can get a lot more done if you get a greater harmonizing of that relationship. The last administration spent a lot more time fighting commissioners of police, not just one, but 2 and 3 commissioners of police. That in the last state of emergency, former Commissioner Earla Harewood found herself in a situation where the whole country's resources were gripped in that scenario instead of fighting crime on the streets of Trinidad and Tobago. And therefore, I can assure you that this administration, we have no intention of spending our time fighting law enforcement because we have political axe to grind and so on. We intend on working alongside the Commissioner and the TTPS to ensure the operational elements that we have spoken to you about, particularly getting more boots on the ground, having more strategic approach to crime. You know, I saw recently, security prison to Tetron. He made the move and then informed the population. That is brilliant policing. That is brilliant policing. And therefore, as the commissioner rolls out a lot more, you know, we always say, we complain. And the Prime Minister again tells us, she said, well, you all expect things to change if we do the same thing over and over again. Everybody's complaining from time to time about when is URP going to be restarted? What you all going to do about URP? What you all going to do about CPEP, etc.? When the Commissioner of Police is telling us that it is those same contracts within these programs that are providing the financing for criminals to invade your homes, to rape your daughters, to go into transnational crime. We have to use the data that is available to us to inform the decisions. So it is not because we don't like this one and we don't like that one and we don't want people in this area and so it has nothing to do with that. What it has to do with is utilizing the data and working alongside law enforcement. So there are elements within the opposition very important to inform the decisions that we make in terms of where the money is going, who is funding crime. When you take the money out of the crime, then you will have the drops. And that is why I could tell you in a short space of 3 months coming into office. Again, it is not where we want it to be, but we have to start from somewhere. At this very juncture where we are today in August 4th, in 2020, the murder rate was 271. In 2022, it was 329. In 2023, it was 341. In 2024, it was 358. At the exact moment today, in 2025, we are the lowest it has been in 5 years, with 231. Now, I don't feel proud to stand up here and beat my chest. It's only 231. It needs to go down lower, but it is going in the right direction. And they may say, well, you all call another state of emergency. We have been very clear that the state of emergency was called in response to advice that was provided by the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. But we didn't say, well, we will impose a curfew and curtail business activity and so on. We said what we will do, we will give the support of the TTPS for the state of emergency, but the state of emergency cannot stand on its own. We have to institutionalize some of our crime-fighting efforts. And again, the opposition and others are parroting, well, why they can't say what is your crime plan? It is because they had no plan for 5 years in the first instance immediately, and 10 years for the 2 terms that they served consecutively. But these are the people who should be ashamed to talk about anything related to crime in this country. That same leader of the opposition is asking if Mrs. Pasar-Bissessar is asleep. She wore pajamas for 10 years. You were sitting in the cabinet of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago with your hat and your nightgown, your nightie, and you had nothing to say. Not one thing to say about crime in Trinidad and Tobago. Our Prime Minister is leading the charge from the front. And therefore, the people of Trinidad and Tobago will not judge you based on what you say. They will judge you based on what you do. And I think the Prime Minister has demonstrated with this government that we are on the road. I'll tell you this, I always say that it may take a day, it may take 2 days, it may take 2,000 days. But one thing that you can never fault Prime Minister Kamala Pasar-Bissessar and your UNC government for not doing is that we have never not demonstrated that we do not have the political will. Because this consultation was the brainchild of the Honorable Prime Minister. I said, Prime Minister, last week I had budget consultation. You want to bring out the next 300 of them? She said, that is the work you sign up for. Do not complain. And that is where we get the strength to do what we do. But I am encouraged because I want to hear from you. I want to hear from you of what concerns you have with respect to this legislation. How do you think we can strengthen the legislation? How do you think that we can utilize greater harmonizing with the TTPS within our own constituency and within our own communities? Anecdotal experiences also help. We want to hear what you have endured. We know it. We have heard some of it. But in hearing the anecdotal information, sometimes what it then allows, it allows us to come up with solutions that ordinarily so you may not have thought of until you are faced with that context and that circumstance in which you have to address it. So I know I have said a lot to you this evening. I want to pass you on to my brother Saddam, who will go through the merits of what is being proposed, what we would like you to have in your minds very clear of where we are going with this, but also to get a greater feedback from you. So I also want to take the opportunity to thank you for the continued support that you continue to give me and your government in here. We will continue to be of service to you, but I ask you to continue turning out and participating in the decision-making of your government. You can choose to sit down home and complain, which you decided by your own actions today you will not do in terms of wanting to be part of the solution. And therefore, this is us keeping that line of communication open with you. There are a lot more areas in which we will discuss. I know there are other areas in which you wish to speak to us about, but we will keep this engagement going. From September, I intend on walking this constituency the last Sunday in every month. So for those of you who cannot come to the office, we will be coming to you, our councillors, our activists, etc., so that we have a greater degree of engagement. That when we have the projects to do come October, whether it's roads, drains, etc., today we are here to talk to you about national security. But when we have those other opportunities, you then can help us in terms of what are the priority areas and where you would like to see our attention focused and addressed. So this evening, it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you the Minister of Legal Affairs, the Member of Parliament for Barry Padarath, San Juan, and a legal luminary in his own right, none other than MP Saddam Hussein.
Thank you very much, Minister Barry Padarath. And firstly, I want to take the opportunity to thank you for allowing me to be here with you all this evening in Couva South. And I think I always say Barry is one of the most courageous ministers and MPs we have in this Republican Parliament. So you are lucky to be represented by him. I also want to acknowledge those members from the local government fraternity, members of the United National Congress Couva South constituency who make these activities happen, chairmen of board, state enterprises, and so on, and most importantly, the constituents and the patriots of Trinidad and Tobago. This evening, my job here is really to contextualize why we are here. The government has taken a decision that we are going to have public consultations on this particular piece of law called the Home Invasion, Self-Defense and Defense of Property Bill 2025. And I want to remind you all that we are only in office for just over 3 months. And you have a brand new piece of legislation fully drafted out for public consultations throughout Trinidad and Tobago. And I want to contextualize the discussion this evening, where the opposition has a false, fake narrative that we don't have an anti-crime plan. It's either one of two things. It's either they can't read or they're out to lie and mislead. That's the two things. Because this document here I have in my hand is called Manifesto 2025, a document produced by the United National Congress. A couple of weeks ago, the cabinet took a decision that this manifesto was adopted as government policy. This was our plan coming into government. So everyone knew what we were going to do. So this law is not by surprise or VAPS. If you look at the first thing here on this page, the page that deals with crime crisis. 1, pass stand your ground laws. That's what we are doing. 2, create the offense of home invasion. 3, allow for the right to bear arms or modify the current legislation to make acquiring firearms by law-abiding citizens easier. So the first point is, this was our policy, this was our plan, it has been promised, it is in the pipeline, and it will be delivered. It will be delivered. And as Minister Padarath spoke to you about the statistics that came out of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, I am proud to be part of a government that supported the appointment of Commissioner of Police Guevara, simply because he's a hands-on Commissioner of Police. Now, I sit in a very special committee of the Cabinet called the National Security Council, which is chaired by the Prime Minister. And this council receives sensitive information in relation to national security matters. And I will never forget the evening, that was the Thursday we had Cabinet, and then the National Security Council was summoned by the Prime Minister, and we were briefed by the Commissioner of Police, and we were also briefed by the Chief of Defense Staff. And the information that the council received, we had no other choice but to have declared a state of emergency to protect judicial officers, to protect law enforcement officers, to protect citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, and to protect public buildings from being attacked. We took decisive action under the leadership of Kamla Persad-Bissessar to protect Trinidad and Tobago. Unlike the other SOE we had last year in December. You remember we had one in December last year? Do you know that SOE? And I spoke about this in the Parliament, Minister Padarath. That SOE that was summoned by the former Prime Minister Rowley, or Young, I don't know which one of them, there was a party in Tobago that night. There was a party in Tobago on that night. Stuart Young came to the Parliament and admit that they decided on declaring a state of emergency on the night of the party. A bash, not a birthday bash in Tobago, but a bash in Tobago. They decided upon that on the night of the party. That is why the Attorney General said that the last SOE was based on nothing. We had certain information in our possession, and we had no choice but to ensure that we took decisive action in a manner where we could have destabilized what we consider to be a criminal syndicate. And I'm saying these things because I want you to understand the gravity of the criminals we have to fight out there. Ordinary citizens, you walk among them. We live among them, but we must now be able to fight against them. We must be able to fight against them. In this short space of time, we appointed a commissioner of police. We are going to absorb 800 special reserve police officers within the regular officers in the police service. We created a Ministry of Homeland Security. We created a Ministry of Defense. We created a Ministry of Justice. All in 3 months because we want to ensure that our citizens are safe. That was one of the largest mandates that was given to us in the last general election. And when you get into our plans and our policies, the first one, as I showed you in the manifesto, is to pass stand your ground laws. And that's why we are here this evening. This is the bill in my hand. It's a very simple piece of legislation, if I would say so. Very simple. Because the legislation does 3 major things. Simple but effective and decisive. 3 things it does. Firstly, it creates an offense of home invasion. Secondly, it now codifies the law when it comes to self-defense. And the third thing is that it now gives a property owner and or legal occupier the right to defend his property. And I'm going to explain each one of that to you all now. When we looked at creating the offense of home invasion, according to the Law Reform Commission, they provided some statistics, and I want to share this with you. Robberies between 2023. 2,613 robberies in 2023. Those are reported figures. 2024, you have 2,399. Burglaries and break-ins. 2023, 1,677. 2024, 1,613. Larceny dwelling house. 2023, 120. 2024, 112. Murders, 2023, 577. 2024, 625. And the majority of these would have taken place in persons' homes, in their castle. So we, as a government, was faced with an epidemic where bandits, monsters, and criminals were invading people's home, taking what they have forcefully, beating them, killing them, injuring them, and there was no offense on the law books called home invasion. Could you imagine that? For 10 years, the last administration sat on their hands, knowing that persons' homes were being invaded. Several times we complained about it, and we never had an offense called home invasion. This government, through this particular piece of legislation, is now introducing an offense called home invasion. An offense of home invasion. Now, when the person commits the offense of home invasion and they are convicted, we ensure that the penalty is severe. The penalty for an offense of home invasion is $500,000 and imprisonment to 20 years. And what we also did is that we looked at other sectors of society where if the home invasion is carried out by a gang member or persons in an organized criminal activity, or where the victim is a child, a senior citizen, or a differently abled person or otherwise vulnerable, we increase the sentence to a fine of $750,000 or for imprisonment up to 25 years. And it gets better. If the person, through committing the offense of home invasion, causes the death of another person, they will be charged for the offense of murder and liable to conviction to suffer death. Couva South, do you all agree with that proposal? The second area that I want to discuss with you is the defense of self-defense. Now, the law in Trinidad and Tobago when it comes to self-defense is this. There is no written law you can find on the statute book to tell you what is self-defense. It is something called the common law. So we have two types of law. We have statutory law, which is what we do in Parliament. We pass a bill, which becomes an act of Parliament. That is statutory law. That is written law. Then we have the common law, which is what we consider to be judge-made law. So over the years, judges and courts will decide upon cases and certain legal principles will be developed. And one of those principles happen to be self-defense. And according to the common law, self-defense is that when someone has attacked you or there's an imminent attack, the reaction must be one of proportionality. Right? You must be proportional. So the law as it stands is that a man enters your home, you don't know if you have a gun, a knife, whatever in his pocket. You have to stand up there and think, what is proportional force? How am I going to deal with this fella? Is that fair to the citizen? So a man enters your home, you take a gun, legal firearm, you take a cutlass or whatever weapon you have available to you, and you kill him. You know, you have to go and sit down in the police station and explain why you kill a man in your house, you know. Is that fair? No. We are changing the law to now suggest, let the criminal explain why he's in your home. Why must you go in a police station and explain why you are protecting your family, yourself, and your property? This UNC government is going to give back citizens their right to enjoy their homes. And there are circumstances that we are progressing with this piece of legislation where we are allowing citizens to use deadly force. We are using deadly force. And there are certain circumstances with respect to the defense of self-defense that we are now putting in law. So therefore we are certain, we are clear, we know exactly what self-defense means. It is no longer an unwritten law. It is now going to find itself in the statute books of Trinidad and Tobago. And several other jurisdictions that we have looked at have similar legislation within their jurisdictions. And the last aspect of the bill, in terms of creating defenses and offenses, is the defense of property, which you can find at clause 8 of the bill, which now indicates, and I want to read because it's important to read this one. It says, subject to section 9, and I'll go through section 9 soon, an occupant has no duty to retreat and has the right to stand his ground against a home invader and use or threaten to use force against the home invader or do anything else that he believes on reasonable grounds be necessary to A, prevent a home invader from entering his dwelling house, B, to cause a home invader who is in his dwelling house or an associated place to leave, C, to protect his property or the property of another person from theft, damage, or destruction by the home invader. D, to prevent a home invader from committing or stopping a home invader from committing a serious criminal offense in the dwelling house. And in these circumstances, we are also allowing citizens the right to use deadly force against these home invaders. And we are also qualifying it by saying that even if the person at the material time may not be the owner of the home. So for example, and we could put it in this way, let's assume that a grandson lives with his grandmother as a guardian. Granny can't defend herself. She may be old and ailing. But she say, boy, bandit in the house, help. If that young man decides to defend his grandmother or the home, he is also protected by the provisions of this law. And that could be found at clause 9 of the bill. But I give you the goodies and I tell you how good the law is. And you are going to give a lot of powers to citizens, yes? But there may be people in the society that may want to misuse the law, agreed? Well, we thought of that also. Because the law has to be balanced. We always complain in the parliament when Faris used to bring law, he bring bad law. The man spent a lot of time in the law school and still bring bad law. But what we are doing is that we are balancing the law. We are balancing the law in such a way that we are going to create exceptions. So that not all circumstances that where deadly force is used, a person can get away scot-free. Because we now have to create exceptions to this. So where a person against whom force is used has a right to be in the house. For example, you have husband and wife living in the house. Husband want to kill the wife, wife want to kill the husband. The both of them have a right to be in the house. They can't come and claim that we're going to use deadly force against each other. Agreed? However, if husband tries to kill the wife with a gun and she decides to retaliate, she has a right to defend herself also because there are instances of domestic violence. And that is something that the court and the prosecution will also look at. If, for example, you use grossly disproportionate force, so you destabilize the man, he's probably dead on the ground, you destabilize the threat, but somebody go and try to saw the man foot or hand or something, that is not necessary. You cannot do those kinds of things. That is grossly disproportionate. Agreed? You already destabilize the threat. Yes? You get rid of him. If, for example, also, law enforcement enters your property lawfully, meaning they come with a warrant, they come under the authority of a court, under the authority of a legal instrument, you cannot exercise that lethal force against law enforcement, police officers, and so on. Because what that does is that the criminals will now want to have a license to kill police when they're coming in the house. Agreed? So we are balancing the law to suggest that if law enforcement officers come into your home, they must be allowed to once they are acting lawfully. Right? So we have created certain exceptions to the law where, in fact, this would not apply. But there are majority of the circumstances. Once the law is used in a lawful manner, it will, in fact, apply to protect the citizens. And as MP Padarath also would have raised in his introductory remarks, we cannot be giving citizens a right to defend themselves in their homes, give them all this power of stand your ground, create an offense of home invasion, allow you the defense of property, but you have nothing to protect yourself with. Yeah? The criminals are coming in your house with their bare hands, you know. They're coming with what? High-powered rifle. They're coming with weapons. That is why the Commissioner of Police, I saw recently, has placed an advertisement within the newspaper and so on, inviting citizens to apply for their FULs. Apply for your FUL. It doesn't mean that every Tom, Dick, and Harry going to get it. We have to be very careful with our narrative. Those citizens who deserve the FUL will be entitled to their FUL once they go through the various procedures under the Firearms Act. And I'm sure many of you all in this room would have applied, or maybe the holders. You have to have a police certificate of good character. You must be in good health. You must have a proper psychometric analysis done. You must be able to have a place where the firearm is stored properly and so on. So those are some of the things that you have to consider when you are applying for an FUL. So the government proposal at this time is we are going to go to Parliament after we pass this piece of legislation together as one of our tools to fight the gruesome criminals out there. And this evening's exercise is not just for myself, Minister, or Chairman Barber to speak, but we are taking your comments, your suggestions, your views into regard. There's a secretariat who is recording all of your concerns. These will then be passed to the Honorable Minister of Justice, the Honorable Attorney General, and the various Law Reform Commission and so on, so that we can have the best piece of legislation going to that Parliament, because this piece of legislation requires a special majority. We have the numbers in the House. The Senate is a different makeup, so we will have to get the votes of the independent senators. So we want to take a very balanced and proportional piece of legislation to ensure that we get full support from the citizenry and in the Parliament. So I thank you very much, Couva South.
Thank you very much, MP Saram Hussein. I know Saram always comes fully prepared. When we had our consultation with the budget, he had numbers there for us. He do his research before he comes. Let's give Saram another round of applause, please. And I just want to mention when he gave that response in Parliament for the SOE, it was great. You really did well. You know, you deal with them in the correct manner. And I look at the whole debate and I was very pleased with your response. Give him another round of applause. All right, we're moving on. We have our lawyer in Couva South here with us, Roshan Babwa. He is the chairman of the Water and Sewage Authority. Give him a round of applause. Welcome him, please. He's here to address you.
Good afternoon. Members of Cabinet, Mr. Saddam Hussein, Mr. Barry Padarath, all other protocols observed. There's not much I can say after both these gentlemen, so I will attempt to close off and then we'll open a discussion and we'll open the floor. I'm here to give some statistics. The proof is in the pudding. Don't take our word for it. I want you all to see the concrete results when nations codify clear self-defense rights. And just to add, I know the naysayers and critics will say there is already a law in place, but I say to them, first world countries with similar common law provisions have transitioned into introducing legislation akin to stand your ground and have seen remarkable results. In Ireland, there would have been a 2011 Dwelling Act, and we would have seen that homicide offenses plunged immediately by 15% in 2011, the year the act took effect. Attempts and threats to murder, assaults, harassments, also significant drops, demonstrating how statutory clarity empowers safe and decisive action. In Italy, the 2019 Legitimate Defense Act, 5 years after its enactment, intentional homicides fell by 532, from 2,097 to 1,565. Thefts declined by 1.8 million incidents, prove that defined self-defense rights correlates with dynamic crime reduction. Italy's 2019 Legitimate Defense Act, also known as the Legitimate Defense Reform, broadened the scope of self-defense in home, making it more likely that a person can legally use force, even lethal force, against an intruder without facing legal repercussions. And lastly, in Florida, the Stand Your Ground law in 2005-2010. Before Florida passed the Stand Your Ground law in 2005, it faced rampant violent crime. But after implementation, the results were undeniable. A 32% decrease in burglary rates within a decade. Home invasions dropped by 38% as criminals feared armed owners. Justifiable homicides increased, not because of chaos, but because Florida ensured that criminals were stopped in the act. Most importantly, innocent lives were saved. Citizens no longer had to choose between retreating like prey or defending their families. These hard numbers confirm when you give citizens unambiguous rights to defend themselves, backed by proportionality and oversight, violent crimes measurably declines. With these few words, I want to open up the floor. Mr. Sukrana, you can come.
Thank you very much, Mr. Roshan Babwa. All right, at this point in time, we're going to hear from you all. But we want to be polite, don't be rude or anything in any way. And I want to stick to the topic. Stand your ground laws. Don't come to talk about drains and road, and if you are peer high anybody, we don't want to hear that. We want to stick to the laws, and we want to be brief, because we want to hear as much people as possible speaking. We want to be brief. We're giving you 1 minute to deal with what you have to say. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. Honorable ministers, councillors, executive members of the constituency. I'm from Digo Martin Central. I pastor in Chaguanas, and I'm a member of the Baptist Union of Trinidad and Tobago, a minister of the gospel. I heard the IRO, the interreligious organization, said that they're going to give their support towards this bill. I, as a pastor, as a minister of the gospel, Elias Lyndon Dick, will do anything possible to make the lives of our citizens, any bill to make the lives of the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago to be more safe. I am in 100% support of such bill. I'm here because I go to Parliament and I listen to our ministers, especially Minister Padarath. And I want you, as members of the constituency in which he belongs to support him 100% because of the work that he does. I listen and I see the attacks on him, and I know it's tough. I also would like to say, I would like to include in that bill Minister Saddam Hussein. The drones, the use of drones. Drones, I believe that drones should be used for recreational purposes only. Because the use of drones are used in all kinds of conditions. A matter of fact, you have business people. I know they have the Chamber of Commerce, members of the Chamber of Commerce sitting here, and business persons. And criminals are using those drones to go around people's houses, look to see the time they come in, the time they go out, and so on, and make their moves. So we have to be very careful. While I love the law, I love the use of that. I think it should be used for recreational purposes. And I would like that part to be included. Because if we look at things are improving, technology is improving, and the criminals are getting ahead of the game. We must be far ahead of the game. So I would like to see part of that be included in that. Thank you so very much, members of Couva. God bless you. God bless the constituency and the people and the business people. God bless.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Katya Armstrong. One of the concerns is with domestic violence. One of the issues that you have to wait too long for a summons to be prepared. A summons is being prepared within 2 months now. Warrants are a longer process too. And when you have to wait so long to get a protection order, by the time it's either you die or you are being harmed from the person. And secondly is that you are being harmed by this person and you have to wait on a medical from the hospital in order for that person to be charged. And the hospital is taking months before they give a medical to charge this person. And while this person is outside who have grievously harmed you, and you could end up as either you die or you survive this incident.
Pleasant good night to everyone. Now, firstly, I'd like to start off by saying, as a citizen of this country, It feels nice to have an administration that comes and cares to the need of the people on the ground. I would also like to thank Mr. Saddam Hussein for that detailed contribution of the law, as you clearly stated everything in black and white. However, I just have a contribution I would like to say personally. Now, with regards to the law, firstly, I agree with the stand your ground law and the fact that citizens should have their right to defend their homes and their premises. However, in order to have a firearm, when people obtain these firearms, if we want to, well, quote unquote, load up the matic, my question is, what will be done for these people to be trained to use these firearms properly? Right? And I believe that implementation should be taken in place. And the next question I have is that with regards to the security cameras, right? When people have security cameras in their homes, I speak personally, right? That across the road from my house, there was a robbery and 8 bandits went by the man. However, when they went to obtain the footage, the police officers came and said that the cameras were not fit towards the national grid. Now this allowed the bandits to get away, and unfortunately, the old man that they beat up, they robbed, they take away his livelihood of cash, and he suffered from trauma and passed. Now, I would just like to say that I think the security cameras should be taken into contribution. In this way, people would be able to identify the bandits and help protect the nation more. But aside from that, I'd just like to say that I am for this law, and I believe that this administration cares about the people. And I would like to thank Mr. Padarath for the job that he is doing to take care of citizens like myself. Keep up the great work.
I just want to commend the bravery of the young man for coming to the microphone. And just one concern that he raised with respect to the training of the FUL holders. There are 2 tiers to acquiring an FUL. First, it's the qualifying stage, and then secondly, of the competence stage. When you have qualified, meaning that you have satisfied the statutory requirements, you are issued with a provisional firearm. When you're issued with a provisional firearm, it allows you to train to use a firearm until you are certified by an instructor. Only then will the FUL be issued. So you have to be trained in order to use the firearm before an FUL is in fact issued.
Hi, a pleasant good night. My name is Safia Mohammed. I'm a youth advocate. So my main concern and pertaining to the stand your ground laws is sexual assault, right? I find that if someone comes and let me say assault you, it takes really, really long for you to get either a warrant signed to arrest a person, the investigators not showing up in the court, and on top of it, they are being very violent and abusive in terms of, I would say, verbal abuse. They would come and whether themselves or their relatives, they would come and verbally abuse you. And I find that is not correct. Also, I would like to suggest something to the Minister of Legal Affairs in terms of the legal affairs aspect. It's really ridiculous. It is. It's frustrating because I am a junior accountant. I'm still doing my Bachelor's of Arts in Accounting at Costart, and I help out my parents in their accounting firm, right? And it's either the website down, you're getting problems with cross-ticket system, you have cross-pins not accounted for to the persons, and when you do create a cross-ticket, it takes them really, really long to answer and reply. So I'd like to suggest something, if you could possibly do it simultaneously, both online and in physical, face-to-face.
Please
I
stick to the
think
topic.
that will
Stick to the
help
topic,
the
please.
others. And the next point is I would like you all to create a legislation to protect the differently able persons. I have one experience though. Whenever, I notice it, whenever differently able persons go to the groceries or wherever, I find them very difficult to get car parks, and the non-disabled persons goes to the car park and occupy that spot, and the differently able persons are not getting the car parks, so they could go to places. That is all I want.
Thank you very much. On 2 points, the bill does in fact cover issues of using deadly force in circumstances of imminent death, grievous bodily harm, grievous sexual assault, or rape to himself or another person. So the bill in fact contemplates those situations you raise. The other issue with respect to the cross system, I am in fact aware of it and I'm working on it and we are going to fix it.
A pleasant good evening to the panel, to the public of Couva. My name is Renee James. I've been living in Couva for the past 10 years. I've been granted a home by Ms. Kamala Bissessa. I paid $1 down, thanks to her. But I mostly be in Port of Spain every blessed day. I leave from Couva to go to Port of Spain. I want to speak on policing. To me, the police, more concentrating right now, especially in Port of Spain, only on ticketing. I find protection is not being done in Port of Spain. You can't even take out your phone to speak to someone if your phone rings in Port of Spain. You're getting it snatched. I find for 2025, you don't have to have all the police officers in uniform in Port of Spain. Let some be rastas, some play vagrants. I am saying, because to be honest with you, the guys that are doing the crime, they could tell you how much hours the police coming out for on the ground and when they're going back into the station. Right? I don't know where the communication is coming from, but I am saying, even in Couva here, in the exchange where I live, there's no patrols inside the community, and I need to see more policing, controlling, and patrolling in all the communities and in all the communities throughout Trinidad and Tobago, and I'm not seeing it at all.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you
for that intervention. If you heard earlier when Saddam and I spoke, a lot of what you mentioned were things, and even the issue with the cross system and legal affairs. Those were matters we inherited after 10 long, hard years of the PNM doing nothing. As I had mentioned earlier, we intend and we have started that exercise. You spoke about several things, one of which was policing. And I can assure you the police is already involved in some of that disguise and so on. It's called intelligence gathering. So I would not go into that except to say a lot of the issues regarding the boots on the ground, vehicles, additional manpower at the stations, better conditions at the stations. These things we inherited in terms of expenditure would continue until October because we have to work within the constraints that we do until a new budget rolls around and TTPS gets a new budget for the new financial year. However, what we have been doing through the Commissioner of Police, operationalizing some of the patrols, additional patrols in terms of high-risk areas. We are looking at the Community Comfort Patrol, which we had during the period 2010 to 2015, which was responsible for doing patrols and being out in the communities 24/7. But that also requires us to have the financing to do it. and therefore you're knocking at an open door. It is something that we are considering. We may not be able to put it in every community, but particularly those that are high risk. Many communities are now high risk. That is something that we are actively looking at. Saddam spoke to you earlier about the SRPs being absorbed into the police service. That will give us at least 800 additional police officers to deploy. So we've now started. It's been 3 months, but I can tell you real physical, tangible things that has happened in 3 months. You're going to get 800 more officers. You have over 100 new vehicles that have been given to the TTPS just recently by Minister Roger Alexander. And therefore you are already seeing in some communities higher visibility, and there's more to come. So I ask you to look out for those, but in 3 months, I think a lot has happened in that regard, and a lot more will come in terms of what you are raising.
Good night, good night. Kenwin Piper. Good night to each and everyone. I am a business owner in California, the chairman of the California Village Council. I'm also an activist in California, working with the youths, right? To Mr. Saddam Hussein. Now, you made a statement with regards to the stand your ground laws, you know, I mean, I want to talk to her. I'll let him know. All right. Now, what I want to say is, if it is that somebody comes into your neighbor's house, because in California, we see brothers keeper, yeah? Right? We live good, right? And I am a FUL holder. Somebody comes into my neighbor's house, I hear the ball in the back canal taking place next door, and I get inside of there, and I deal with them. Former neighbor, where do I stand?
MP Padarath whispered to me, you stand your ground, right? You stand on your ground. But legally, in terms of, if you look at clause 9 of the bill, in terms of the proposal, because this is not laws yet, I just want to remind you all, this is the proposal. It still has to be passed in the parliament. Where you are acting in good faith of an occupant during a home invasion, or you at the direction of that occupant, and you use the same degree of force against the home invader, you are protected by the law.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. Can we expect to see legislative changes to the Firearms Act? Because when this bill comes in line, the stand your ground legislation, people may want to get a firearm. Presently, as it stands, there's a backlog of 35,000 firearms applications. People will have, and there's 9 people or 10 people working in the firearms unit at the police station. The system is not digitized, so people have to wait a long time, sometimes years. If I use a licensed firearm and shoot somebody who enters my house, I have to wait probably 2 years for the police to return it to me. What will happen to me in that 2 years? There are a lot of issues to be addressed with this. Also, the cost of a firearm is $10,000 and more. Will the government consider reducing the price of firearms for people who want to use it? Or raising the taxes on it to raise revenue? Thanks very much.
I'll answer one of your questions directly with an indirect response. That's the one that you ask about 2 years in terms of getting back your firearm. I think what the gentleman is alluding to is that currently, if you use your firearm, you discharge your firearm against a person, and then the matter goes to the police for an investigation, they normally take the firearm away from the user until the completion of the investigation. The effect of the law as being proposed right now is this. We are allowing persons to use a particular type of force against a home invader. So once prima facie that can be made out that the person is a home invader, a lawful firearm was used and so on, they may not even necessitate an investigation because now you're clothing the home user with protection of the law. That's the first point. The second point is that you have to ensure that that user continues to be a holder of the firearm simply because of retaliation. There are a lot of gang killings and reprisals in this country. So you do not want to leave a person exposed. So in fact, the law indirectly deals with that particular situation. With respect to the pricing of the firearms, I think, Mr. Budan, I'm not certain about the prices of firearms and so on. It seems as though you are more educated in that regard. But that is something definitely that the government, if a proposal comes, will look into, but I can't give a response to that directly.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. Diraj Mahis, President, Couva Point Lisa's Chamber, and resident. Honorable Minister Padarath and Minister Saddam, thank you all for the opportunity here for having this consultation, first of all, and to indicate that we stand by supporting this legislation. It is the way to go in order to get this type of crime done. The previous speakers...
Could you allow me 1 minute, please?
Yes, sir.
Could the people outside be quiet, please? You're disturbing the meeting.
Yes. So the previous speaker spoke to one of the questions that I wanted to address with regards to after an activity takes place and the seizure of firearms, which is currently taking place now. But you have explained it, so that is acceptable in terms of when something happens, you leave that person vulnerable, an FUL holder. The other item is you spoke to the grandmother, grandchild situation. And there is something called a firearm user employee certificate, which in companies allows one holder and then the employees, or if it's a security company and so on. So I'm wondering if something like that would be looked at, can be looked at in terms of other family members being able to have a user's certificate, of course with going through all the rigorous training and things like that, because you have to be trained as you indicated and so on. And you also spoke about previously in terms of the dwelling and where it ends. And that is something that persons coming into their property, opening a gateway, getting into the driveway, and may have a secondary garage door or something like that to get into your yard space and so on. So how does that, some clarity on that? That is what I would like to indicate at this point in time, because just to add, as Minister Padarath indicated, you came fully prepared. I also came because I have the Chapter 776, the Florida statute with me that I went through, but I see that you have everything covered, sir. So I take my leave. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Firstly, I want to deal with the issue you asked about whether we could have something similar to the FEUC, which is the employee certificates for home users. That's an excellent suggestion and something that we have recorded and will bring to the attention of the legal team. With respect to the definition of the dwelling house, the definition section of the Act spells out it, which is at section 4, where the dwelling house also includes the curtilage and the natural boundaries or the physical boundaries around the house. So plenty of people, I give an example about the man who jumped your fence and picked in Zabuka. He is considered to be on your property. Yes? Why he picking Zabuka in your yard?
Pleasant evening, ladies and gentlemen, members of the head table, people of Couva South, and visitors. My name is Ramchan Rajbal Maharaj, councillor, and my home was invaded on the 8th of December 2022. I was at gunpoint, tied, gagged, and what have you. I'm just saying that to tell you that this legislation, all those who were invaded or attempted to be are supported this, you could bet 150%. This is what they wanted. But more than that, the trauma, God forbid those who have not experienced home invasion wouldn't have to go through. We couldn't sleep night after night. If a dog bark, you're up. If a car stopped by your neighbor, you are worried, you are scared. My wife, last 5 months after, she passed. So I just want to ask the Minister Salam here, that you mentioned about police coming to your home and what have you. But we know there are rogue police officers. We have heard many stories about fake police officers with police uniforms invading and doing whatever. What can be done, especially they also use unmarked vehicles when they come into your home. Especially with the SOE, they do not have to guarantee a warrant to come to your home for investigation. What percentage of people in this society, when police come to their home, they feel comfortable that they are real police? What can we do to ensure that something to be done, that police come into your home, you feel they are genuine police officers coming and you open your door for them? Secondly, the issue about police officers with coming to you, cameras, people who using the CCTV cameras in your homes and surrounding. When police are effecting their investigation, and when they ask the neighbors of the victim that live nearby to use the cameras to see, they are being denied. Could it be that become a mandatory process? Just as how you have police asking for citizen's arrest from the public, could that be, because if they comply, a lot of crime will be solved, especially with home invasion, thief, and what have you. Thank you.
Let me answer the last suggestion first with respect to the CCTV cameras. There are certain communities in Trinidad and Tobago, I could tell you for a fact in Sawa, where certain business people or homeowners share their feed with the TTPS. So there would not be really a need to retrieve the footage from the owner, because they would already have had the feed coming through from the shared system. There's a technology already in place for that. The second question you had asked was with respect to police officers. Although we are in a SOE, it does not mean that a police officer don't have to comply with their standing orders and departmental orders. Once police officers at your home with a warrant or without a warrant in the SOE circumstance, they must identify themselves. There must be identification and proper identification of police officers, and now they are required to wear the police ID badges. So there is certain checks and balances for the identification of genuine and lawful police officers.
Stands the fear and vulnerability to many women in our country in their lives today. We're here tonight to discuss Stand Your Ground legislation, a law that can mean the difference between fear and freedom, between being a victim and being empowered. This legislation isn't about encouraging violence. It's about protecting lives, our most precious lives. It's about ensuring that we as women is faced with a real honor, not a threat anymore in our homes, on the streets, or anywhere that we survive. We have the legal right to defend ourselves within being expected not to run, hide, or second-guess our survival. Too many times I've listened to stories of women being abused, attacked, murdered, intimidated, and the one common threat is the feeling of being helpless under the current system with the past administration. I'm sure I say that correctly. And that must change, and we're in the process of having it change. And for initiating this change, a special recommendation, must be given to our very own Prime Minister, a woman, our Prime Minister, our political leader of United National Congress, and her astute leadership. With the proper safeguards, education, and the clear legal boundaries, I believe that the Stand Your Ground legislation can send a powerful message. It gives us as women the rights to live without fear. It is not negotiable, and it's the law that is finally there that will reflect that. Let us use this consultation to ensure the voices of our women are heard, respected, and protected, and not just in word, but in the law that we and our administration is going to set first. Thank you.
Pleasant good night to the head table. My name is Karishma Beda. I am an attorney at law. I would like to firstly say thank you for giving me this opportunity to say my piece and to have the community involved in something as big as this. So my first question would be, in granting FUL licenses to persons, how does the government plan to allow persons access to the proper training? Is the government planning to give persons proper training before they allow granting these things?
So this is what I explained earlier on. When you're going to do the competency phase before you're issued the FUL, there are certified firearms institutes that the Commissioner of Police will certify. A person, when they issue a provisional firearm, will be required to undergo a series of training, and then they'll be issued with a certificate of competence. Only when they're issued with a certificate of competence, then the Commissioner of Police will issue the FUL. So you must be trained before you are issued with an FUL. It's the same as a driver's license. When you get the provisional license, you must learn to drive, do the test before you actually get the driver's license.
Thank you. And my second question is, how does the stand your ground law affect the citizens' duty to retreat?
So on the bill itself, when you look at the general principles of the bill, which can be found at clause 5, it says that a citizen has no duty to retreat from a home invader at the dwelling house. So therefore you can stand your ground against the home invader. There's no more duty to retreat.
Thank you very much.
Pleasant good night, everyone. Name is Colin Gola. I'm a resident from Couva. First of all, I'd like to thank those at the head table, the indomitable MP Padarath, right, eminent lawyer Saddam Hussein, and an ex-eminent lawyer, Mr. Babwa. All right, I am so elated and glad to know that there's an overwhelming number of people here, and the response is overwhelming, right? Now, why it is overwhelming? This crime about, these cries about crime has hit every corner of Trinidad and Tobago, and that is over the years. And I'd like to say this, and I'm being courageous in saying this, the last government, they were like they're just walking in slow motion. And what I like to say, they were pussyfooting with crime situation. I could recall numerous times, town meetings and so on from the then opposition leader, who is today our Prime Minister, Kamala Prasad Visesa. She was holding town meetings, east, west, north, and south. And many times, numerous times occasions, she invited the government or even representative from the government to attend those meetings, and those, it went on deaf ears. So we reach a stage, we reach a crescendo, as it were, that we have an overwhelming voice here for the stand, the ground legislation, and that bill has to be passed, because many times mothers, fathers, children, relatives are crying because of home invasion, right? But I'd like to add a little something to this. I prepare a short note here on it, and we have to be proactive in our approach. We cannot be reactive. Reactive is just apprehending the criminal, locking them up, carry them in jail, also prosecuting, and even, well, in this case, we could kill them, right? But the reason why I'm saying proactive, we have to ask ourselves why someone resort to crime. Why someone resort to crime? We cannot just be apprehending and holding criminals, right? We have to look at the whys in crime. And I just took three areas here on employment. People are not working. There are people who are not. No, I am not endorsing crime. I am just telling you some of the reasons why we have, or what is triggering crime. We have to go to the minds of people. We have to know what is happening in our neighborhoods. We have to look at the employment situation. A lot of people are on the breadline right now, and they are resorting to crime because some people have wife to mind, children to mind, families to mind, and so on. So that is one reason. Now, as I said before, that they shouldn't be resorting to crime, but we are looking at proactive measures that the government, the present-day government, could take to alleviate or minimize this crime situation we are having here. And next thing, we are looking at tertiary education.
Okay, time is up. 2 minutes has
All right, but look at those three areas I have here. If you could look at those areas, we could address the crime situation too. Thanks, right.
Good night, everybody. Yes, yeah, I'm arthritic, so I have to stand my ground, so I'll have to sit down.
Wait.
Yeah.
You want to sit down?
Yeah, I can sit down.
Wait.
I won't be long. Thank you.
Wait, you want to stand up?
I know I thought I just wanted to say what I had to say. Thank you, Pastor. God bless you.
Talk to the mic now.
Right. My name is Wendy Partup. I am from Door Village, and I'm so happy to see you all. Clearly, you all remind me of Julius Caesar. I came, I saw, and I conquered. And what you all have done today, you all have conquered a fear that we have all experienced. Then you have done it with humility and clarity, and that is important, that there must be the communication that you all exuded between head table and the audience. It was receptive and we could understand what is happening. Now for the contribution. I support this legislation. I've seen it happening all over the world. I've seen the Canadian system, which probably we may have to draw for more than anything else. But the aspect of it is that when you ask for and you are granted a firearm user's license, is it confidential? Does anybody know about it? And this is a highly sophisticated criminal country. Therefore, I need to find out if a person is granted that license, is he allowed to keep it with him wherever he goes, or does he have to keep it at home? Is there clarity on that?
Speaking about the book?
If he gets the firearm.
Oh, the firearm.
Yeah.
If you are leaving your firearm at home, there are certain protocols you have to follow in terms of safekeeping in your safe and so on. If you're leaving the country, you have to make sure that it's lodged in a proper fire station, police station and so on. If you want to carry it on you, you also have to carry it in a concealed manner.
Right. So with great respect, I accept that and this. Now, what happens now in our criminal society with sophisticated members, if this person leaves his home and his family to go and work on a night shift, he leaves his gun at home in a place where they know. Bandits enter. They beat up the people, they do whatever. I'm speaking local parlance here. They take the firearm and they go. There must be a nexus, a connection between the legislation and the operational facility. We have institutions that have been broken down in this country. There's no connection between institutions. And with this, I say it with great respect. The police force is not as efficient as it ought to be. So here you have the firearm user, family there, but no protection. So therefore, I need to ask you, Minister, to look into the aspect where we can coordinate the activities of the firearm user, because the bandits know who they are, and the ones who need to be protected. I thank you so very
Thank
much
you very
for
much.
listening.
And your concern is noted, and it's similar to my friend from the business chamber. And that will also be translated to the Honorable Attorney General.
Okay, we just take those in the line and we'll end with the last person in the yellow t-shirt.
Good night, everyone. Good night to the head table. As a quick question, Minister Hussein. Rented a beach house at Myra with the family. In the middle of the night, 2 men enter with high-powered rifle. I have a fuel holder with me, within the family. But for some reason, he is not well and he's out of it. And I took his firearm and shoot the 2 men who entered. Will that stand your wrong law save me?
That didn't happen, right? I'm getting. In those circumstances, there's something called weapons of opportunity. It's not advisable that someone who is not a firearms user use someone else's firearm. That user's license is for that person alone. We take the suggestion Mr. Padarath, my friend from the business community, has suggested with respect to how we can allow other persons in a home to use a firearm. That is a proposal that we will take to the Honorable Attorney General for further discussion upon. But if you have the stabilizer threat coming into your home, the legislation clothes you with the protection to stand your ground for yourself, your family, and even if you're in a rental facility, you are allowed to still stand your ground because you are a lawful occupier of that premises.
I want to say a pleasant good night to the members of the head table and all the persons that are in attendance at this session this evening. My name is Gilbert Agard. I live at Point Lisas in Gardens. I'm going to be very short in the sense that I understand where the government wants to go as regards the stand your ground legislation. The idea of us looking at the position of defense of ourselves and our families as it pertains to home invasions. I think this is where the stress is. The stress of the point has to do with home invasion situations. What do you do? Because they went at extreme to tell us what's the purpose for the legislature, drafting of that legislature, and where the part that we can play. This has been very clear. So on that whole issue of home invasion, I want to ask this question. Would one who is in possession of a firearms license for the defense of his home and his belongings, would he or she be entitled if in another jurisdiction of Trinidad and Tobago, would they be permitted to take that firearm out of the home per se? Would that be, if that is not considered, I would like the drafters of the legislature to think about it that way. Because we know how Trinidadians are in terms of, they believe that if we have this, if we own this, then we can go anywhere with it. So, I just more or less thought about that as a consideration. And if not, I will want to put forward as a recommendation. Thank you very much.
So I just want to explain something to you. This law is only applicable to Trinidad and Tobago. When you're leaving the jurisdiction, you have a duty to lodge that firearm in a police station. You cannot take that firearm out of the jurisdiction because when you bring it back into Trinidad, it's considered to be an import of a firearm, which takes you into a different realm. When you're leaving the jurisdiction, it must be lodged in a police station for safekeeping. Yes?
Good night, Mikhail, resident from Couva, and I have 2 questions to ask. So, if I was to defend my home and shoot someone, would I be held in custody? And along that line, for instance...
We're not hearing you properly.
Oh, sorry.
You can speak slowly, yeah.
If I was to defend my home and shoot someone, would I be held in custody? And along that line, for instance, if I use the firearm with a licensed user against a bandit, where do I stand?
Okay, so you're asking if you shoot someone who comes into your property with a with a legal firearm?
No, no.
With somebody else's firearm?
No, I was talking about like if, for instance, right, let me say my dad have a licensed firearm, right? And a bandit come in the house and, you know, and I use the gun, where do I stand?
Right. That's the same question someone asked earlier on, this guy here, with the Mayor incident. And as I said earlier on, that is a proposal that we are going to take to the Attorney General. Remember, the bill is not a license to kill everyone. There are certain prescriptions in the law. We still have to comply with the Firearms Act and so on. Yes? So we will take that proposal to the Attorney General, and that is something that we can have further discussion upon. Yeah? Okay, great.
Okay. First of all, I want to take this opportunity to thank our great leader, Kamala Prasad-Bissessar, for moving with this law. She had been talking about stand your ground way before the election. And then they made it law by putting it in the manifesto. And now it is going to happen. So we have to thank her first for having the vision and the foresight to see a way of stopping or slowing down the home invasion. So thank you to Kamala Prasad-Bissessar. Secondly, I want to thank our good friend MP Saddam Hussein for joining us. He has been joining us for every event that we have since our MP took office. Thank you very much, Mr. Saddam Hussein. You have been very informative. All the time you have been prepared. You came prepared. I want to thank let's see that. Oh, we have Senator Big. Senator Big there. Welcome, welcome. Sorry I didn't observe you before. I want to thank our good lawyer here from our Couva South office and the chairman of the WASA board for his input in today's event. I also want to thank the host, my MP Barry Padarath, for hosting you guys here this afternoon. And I want to put special thanks to Alderman Anil Kamal for putting this event, logistics and everything together. With the help of the Calderac Sports Club, this event has put together singly by Alderman Anil Kamal. Give him a round of applause, please. And last but not least, I want to thank you all for coming and sharing your discussion with us and how you feel about the law. And the interaction was great. We had plenty of views and stuff about the stand your law legislation, and let's hope. Huh? Okay. Our Prime Minister will be present there as a featured speaker. So make an effort to attend our Monday night forum on the 11th at the Couva South Hall. Thank you very much.